Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Inside ND Sports Podcast. I'm Tyler James, and I'm joined once again by the one and only Eric Hansen. Together, we cover Notre Dame football, recruiting, and more for InsideNDSports.com on the Rivals Network. The Inside ND Sports Podcast is presented by Dead Soxy, makers of the best premium socks I've ever owned. Are you still wondering what to do about those last-minute stocking stuffers? I know I'm not quite done with my Christmas shopping yet. Do you need a gift for that random relative or goofy friend that gets you something and you aren't usually prepared to return the favor? Well, Dead Soxy has you and their feet covered. Head over to deadsoxy.com and use code LUCKY at checkout for savings exclusive to our Inside ND Sports Podcast listeners. That's right. Promo code LUCKY, L-U-C-K-Y, gets you 30% off and free shipping on all orders with no minimum purchase required. This deal isn't even available to the general public, so make sure you head over to deadsoxy.com, deadsoxy.com. Happy holidays from Dead Soxy, and as always, stay Soxy. We are less than 2 weeks away from the beginning of the early signing period for the 2023 class and closing in on 3 weeks out from Notre Dame's matchup with South Carolina in the Gator Bowl. Given that it's the final stretch in recruiting, we wanted to bring on newly crowned Butkus Award winner Drayk Bowen, the unquestioned leader of Notre Dame's 2023 recruiting class. Drayk, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Drayk, first off, congratulations on winning the high school Butkus Award. What did that mean to you? And I know the Butkus Award likes to do something special when it presents the award. So how did you find out about winning it the other day?
So they came to my school and I had a big surprise. Only my AD and my principal knew about it. So they got our whole team together and came to the gym and presented it to me. But it was super exciting. Have been able to win that award in front of my family and my teammates, knowing that they both my family and my teammates have done so much to help me get that award.
Just to follow up, you're the fourth high school winner of that award that was a Notre Dame recruit. Did you hear from Manti or Jaylon or Prince Colley?
Yes, sir. Jaylon reposted it and retweeted it on Twitter, and then sent me some DMs and said congratulations and stuff. So that was super exciting to hear from him. Knowing his success at Notre Dame and then after Notre Dame. So that was super exciting.
He played a lot of running back in high school like you did too. Did you know that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I actually saw Jaylon play against Andrean, which is where Drayk goes to school, when Jaylon was in high school, and Jaylon jumped over a defender, but he got flagged for it because that's not illegal. That's not legal in Indiana high school football. So yeah. That's the kind of athlete that Jaylon Smith was.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's they made it a rule where like only if the defender is going at your legs can you jump over him. So, but yeah, he's an incredible player.
Well, Drayk, it seems like since you've been committed, you've taken a real leadership role in crafting this class from a player standpoint. And I'm wondering why you did that and kind of what that role kind of looks like on a daily or weekly basis.
So I kind of did that mainly because of my proximity to Notre Dame. I'm only an hour and a half away, so it's not super far for me. So I can get up there for any event, game, whatever it may be. And so being that close and being able to meet any new recruit that maybe is liking Notre Dame or that Notre Dame may have interest in or we want or something like that, I can get up there and meet them, talk with them, and kind of show them why I chose Notre Dame. And so, I think that was a big thing was how close I am to Notre Dame. And then it really isn't too much, just mainly a lot of talking to people, like talking to recruits and stuff like that. Just kind of building friendships and relationships with them. And so that's mainly what it is, just building relationships and meeting new people and then kind of showing them why I chose Notre Dame, why I think, Notre Dame is the best school in the country.
We've seen some of the fellow commits being pursued by some other schools here in the last couple of weeks. And earlier today, Dylan Edwards backed away from his commitment. Do you try to be proactive in reaching out to some of those guys that other schools are going after, or you just sort of let them do their own thing because you sort of already probably expressed plenty of things to them previously?
Yeah, it's a little bit of kind of letting them do their own thing and then also talking with them through it, talking with them about it, I guess. That's a lot of what it is. It's kind of they have to at the end of the day they have to figure out what they want for themselves and what's best for them. And so those decisions are big ones. Where you're going to college to play football is a huge decision, or just where you're going to college. And so while I can give them my input, at the end of the day, they got to do what's best for them. And if they don't think Notre Dame is what's best for them, or they think another school may not be good for them, and they're coming to Notre Dame, that has to be their choice. And so, while yes, I give my input and try to talk to them about why I think they should stay or why I think they should come. At the end of the day, they have to make what the decision that's best for them.
Drake, NIL's been around for about a year and a half now. It really didn't affect the 2022 class as much as it was front and center for 2023 cycle. And I'm wondering what your experience with that was in terms of just knowing everybody else in the class. I mean, how big of a deal do you think it was for kids in making their decision in this class, at least the ones that you've come in contact with?
Notre Dame, I don't think it was a big deal with Notre Dame. I think Coach Freeman has done a great job of recruiting people to the school and to his coaching staff. So I think that was a huge, maybe a bigger part beyond recruiting, like when they're at the school. Maybe that's what recruits thought of because of NILs, because Notre Dame's alumni base and how big it is and how wealthy it is. But during the recruiting, Coach Freeman and his staff have done a great job of recruiting to the school and recruiting to the coaching staff and showing why Notre Dame football is where it is right now, and then where it's going to be. And we're on the come up right now. And so I think he's done a great job of doing that and not really trying to present NIL as a factor in recruiting, while maybe other schools do that because of many reasons. But Coach Freeman has done a great job of recruiting to the school, not recruiting for the money.
Drake, this senior season at Andrean, you were asked to do a lot at both linebacker and running back. I think you rushed for over 1,700 yards and scored something like 26 touchdowns. And I think your tackle total was somewhere around 144. How did you hold up physically to the demands of everything you sort of went through as a senior?
Yeah, it was difficult. Being that used, but I learned how to take care of my body. Throughout the season, then added some more this year. But yeah, it was difficult. Saturdays were not enjoyable some weeks. So, but a lot of stretching, working out, making sure that I kept my body in shape and kept the demands of what it needed to do right. But yeah, a lot of yoga. That's really one of the big things that I learned throughout this year was how impactful yoga is for your body and just the stretching aspect. But yeah, it was definitely difficult and challenging, but I learned how to really, really make sure my body was in tune so I could go the next week just as good as I did the week before. So,
well, my mom's going to have to watch this podcast. She's 93 years old and still teaches yoga, so she'll be happy to hear your endorsement. I'm as far as college ready. How college ready do you feel like your game is? You're 6'2" and 230, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's not like you have a lot of growing to do to be college size. But just the rest of the part of your game, the mental part, the understanding offenses and so forth, where do you feel like you sit in those areas?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of room to grow. Going in, it's a completely different ball game than high school maybe, and so offenses are a lot more complex, defenses are a lot more complex, and so just probably the mental aspect is definitely going to be the biggest part where I have to grow, along with the speed of the game. That's another way bigger aspect is how fast people move in college compared to high school. And so, learning the playbook is something that's gonna, that's gonna be a new thing for me is learning a big playbook, an in-depth playbook. So, that's going to be the biggest area where I have to be prepared and be ready to improve on is definitely the mental aspect and learning kind of overall the new aspects of the game as they develop and get more complex.
I think Rivals, which is our organization, lists you as the number one outside linebacker in the country. But are you which positions are you projected at Notre Dame? Which one do you think you'll end up playing?
So they said I can really play all the linebacker positions with my skill set, but they see me as a will linebacker most.
All right, the will linebacker has been racking up tackles in Notre Dame's defense in recent years, so that's a good position to play. Drayk, we're getting close to the end here in terms of you enrolling at Notre Dame. Are there any last things on your to-do list that you want to do or get done before you head off to Notre Dame?
No, my just the All-American game. Just getting ready for that, getting prepared. And so other than that, though, I don't really have a ton. Just kind of hanging out with family, getting ready for Christmas. So, but yeah, that's really it. Not too much I want to do or need to do.
Do you have a in-home visit schedule with some Notre Dame coaches coming up?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
And when is that? Do you know?
Sunday.
Okay. Speaking of family, don't you have a little brother that plays at Hanover Central?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell us about him. What's his game like? What year in school is he and so forth?
He's a freshman right now. So he just got done. He played safety for them. I only got to go to a few games, but he does pretty well for himself. He can cover some ground. He plays very well downhill. And so he can go up with people and go get some balls and at least make them not catch it. So I know he's a hard hitter too. So he's a pretty good football player, but I don't know that that's necessarily what he wants to do, but he could definitely do it as long as he keeps working at it.
And you couldn't recruit him to Andrean?
No, he's a baseball guy, and so he and he likes public schools more too. So that's his type of a deal. Is he came from a public school, has been in public school all his life, so he just enjoyed that more.
Okay, now when I did talk to you long ago when we did a phone interview, we did talk about there was a different baseball coaching regime here and so forth. With a new coaching staff and so forth, how do you feel like you will be able to fit in? And do you think that playing baseball is something that's going to be realistic even as a freshman, that you want to kind of dive into both as a freshman?
Yeah, I do think that's something that I can do both as a freshman and beyond. And I do really like the baseball coaches. And so I think that I could definitely fit in there and definitely give them some give them something to work with in me. But I'm super excited, and so we'll see how the freshman year goes. But because that's going to be an adjustment period is having the two sports along with classes and other stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes the first couple of weeks. That's going to be an adjustment for me. So but yeah, I'm super excited to be able to play for him.
So you're enrolling early, right?
Yes, sir.
So you will play on this year's baseball team, this year's Notre Dame baseball? Wow.
Yes.
And what positions? I know you play all over the place and you're really good, but what position do they kind of project you at?
They said I can start out on the infield, and then if they see me best in the outfield or wherever they may need me, they said they will move me where I seem fit best.
Okay.
Drayk, what has it been like to get to know Al Golden in his first year as Notre Dame's defensive coordinator and as your future position coach? What is he like as a recruiter? What have you learned about him as a coach over the last several months?
Yeah, he's super smart. His defense is super sophisticated. It's truly an NFL defense, and so that's something that's really awesome. Is that he's super in depth with everything. He makes sure and explains everything, and so you really understand it. It just takes some learning and putting it into action, but. Being able to play for him is super exciting because he came from the NFL, so he knows what that's like, and so that's your dream. You're going to college, playing Division 1, you want to get to the next level, and so I think it's super exciting to be able to play for him as his defense translates to the NFL probably best out of a lot of colleges, and so he's super exciting to play for, super exciting to talk to. He really gets to know you and your family, and checks up on how everyone's doing and how you're doing, how your body's doing, how you're doing in football, and et cetera, and just in life. So he's super exciting to play for, or I'm super excited to play for him, and I really like him as a person too.
Drake, there are a lot of ups and downs with the Notre Dame football team this season. They start out 0-2, the loss to Marshall. There's the middle of the year loss to Stanford. Then there's these huge highs with the Clemson victory and so forth, the shutout in the snow at Boston College. I know fans, grown-ups, they're up and down with the team. How about a recruit like you? Are you able to stay a little bit more even keel, kind of knowing the bigger message of Notre Dame?
Yeah, I am. I know that the first few games it's rough. Playing Oklahoma State last year, started off super hot, second half super cold. So that was a rough one. And then you open up with Ohio State in the shoe. That's always going to be a tough game, no matter who you are. And then Marshall had gotten a lot better. They had some transfers come in, and so they played perfect, and made no mistakes on either side of the ball. And so when you're playing a team like that, you have to, even though you may have more talent, more size, better, whatever, you got to really make sure that you limit your mistakes. And so no, they just didn't limit their mistakes, and at the end of the day, that's what killed them. And so, and same thing with Stanford. They had way better talent, better players, and so it's just little things like that in a big, like, even in college, little things like that are the difference. And so I think that's what contributed to the losses. But as a recruit, it's just you just got to know kind of what the message is, and so got to know that what you're coming into, and that not every game's going to be perfect. And so that really didn't affect me. It's more like dang, we could have been ranked higher, or we shouldn't have lost that game or something like that. But at the end of the day, you just gotta kind of look at the little things and realize that there's a bigger picture to it.
Did you storm the field after the Clemson game?
Yes, sir. We stormed the field with the fans.
Drake, given that you were around the team and at all the home games so frequently, what did you learn about, like, sort of how the team handled the season and sort of handled the ups and downs itself and managed to navigate through that? Were there lessons that you were able to gain from that as a recruit, and seeing how the players and the coaches handle all that?
Yeah, it was just kind of turned into more of a bond. It was more of a we're gonna figure this out on our own. We're not gonna let outside sources affect us, and so kind of that's the same thing that really happened. Like, it was easy for me to translate that because of what happened this year with my team. We started out 0-2 to two teams that we probably could have beat and should have beat, and so that was rough for us. We had to look at ourselves, kind of figure out what was wrong, what was going wrong, what we needed to fix, and so that's what they did, and they figured it out just like we figured it out, and so. At the end of the day, that's really all it is. When you're struggling and whatever it is, you got to look at yourself first and figure out what's going on. And they did that exceptionally and found out what they needed to fix, improved on it, and finished out the season on a high note.
Drake, is there anybody on the team, especially in the linebackers group, that you particularly bonded with?
Yeah, I really like Maris and JD and Jack. I I got really close with. I played Nolan last year, and so me and him were friends. Jaylon, I've talked to Jaylon a lot. Prince, I've talked to a couple times. So I talked to a lot of those guys in the locker room, and in the linebacker room. So it's super exciting going in there with all those relationships built, and people I can go to that have been in there for a year, up to 4 years. So kind of pick their brain at stuff that I need to learn, what not to, what to do, stuff like that.
Drayk, I'm not expecting you to have all the rankings memorized or anything like that, but I'm curious if I asked you to pick one of your fellow commits who is maybe slept on or isn't getting enough praise or love, who's the guy that you would point to in the class that's like, this guy's going to be legit? I'm not sure why you guys aren't talking about him more.
Probably, trying to think. Probably Christian Gray, maybe a Don Schuler. Those are some. Don's doing really well. He's a really great player, and so is Christian. But those two are really, really great players.
All right, Drayk, that's all we have for you. We really appreciate you taking time to talk to us tonight. Best of luck in the last couple of weeks of your high school career and getting on campus at Notre Dame.
Thank you so much.
As a reminder, the Inside ND Sports podcast is presented by Dead Soxy, maker of the best dressed socks you'll ever wear. Still wondering what to do about those last-minute stocking stuffers and holiday gifts? Need a gift for a random relative or a goofy friend that gets you something and you aren't usually prepared to return the favor? Dead Soxy has you and their feet covered. Head over to deadsoxy.com, that's DEADSOXY.com, and use the promo code LUCKY at checkout for savings exclusive to Inside ND Sports podcast listeners. That's right, Lucky gets you 30% off and free shipping on all orders, and there's no minimum. This deal isn't available to the general public unless you leak it out. Remember, all the socks come with a patented technology with a no-slip guarantee, made from that really great bamboo fabric for that premium luxury feel. Great colors and designs that match up with the team we cover and that you follow. So happy holidays from Dead Soxy, and as always, stay soxy.
All right, now it's time for questions. Our question segment is powered by Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner. Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group are your local farmland specialists. With decades of experience in Indiana agriculture, no one knows the market better. Whether you're doing a 1031 exchange or simply buying and selling farmland, your local Acre Pro agent will walk the land with you and ensure the deal is done right. Visit acrepro.com or call 765-587-3185 and talk to your local land expert today. Again, 765-587-3185. You can submit questions to us on Twitter or the Insider Lounge message board before every podcast. I'm at TJamesND and Eric's at eHansenND. First one I have is from at Coffee Dark Roast in celebration of tight end Michael Mayer declaring for the NFL draft. Who is your top 5 tight ends for Notre Dame that you've seen since Charlie Weiss? I assume everyone will rightfully put Mayer number 1, but not me. And Coffee Dark Roast's list is number 5, Tommy Tremble, number 4, John Carlson, number 3, Kyle Rudolph, number 2, Michael Mayer, and number 1, Tyler Eifert.
Well, for me, it was pretty easy exercise. When we were in the early part of the pandemic, when there were no sports going on, yeah. I was rating everything. I mean, I even seeded the semifinalists in The Voice that year just for my own thing, just since there were no sports around to do those things. But I did the tight ends, the greatest tight ends in Notre Dame of all time. And I did it from the 2 platoon football era, meaning that guys weren't playing both ways. It was easier to define the tight end position. So 1964 to the present. So fortunately for me with this question, 4 of those 10 were in that list. Michael Mayer was just enrolling, so I did not have him on the list. But he makes my number 1 in this particular list. I think it's a real debate between Michael Mayer and Ken McAfee from the 1977 team. Ken was a 3-time All-American. He finished 3rd in the Heisman Trophy voting on a team that had Joe Montana on it. I mean, it's it's in his context of his era, it was amazing. Now, Mayer didn't play as a senior, and that's a big difference in those two. So you have to kind of weigh that. But I went with Michael Mayer number 1, Tyler Eifert number 2, John Carlson 3, Kyle Rudolph 4, and Anthony Fasano number 5.
All right. I
And
wasn't
if
sure.
I had to go to a 6, I'd go Cole Kmet. He had some other people that
Yeah, he
listed,
called
and he
him.
had Fasano in there. So I assume that he was inclusive of the Weiss era, not since the Weiss era.
Yeah, that was my interpretation too. Although Carlson didn't his whole career, or not Carlson, Fasano's whole career wasn't during the Weiss era. If
Correct.
I'm accurate. So I left.
Same with Carlson.
I left Fasano off, but I could have made an argument for putting him in there. I had Mayer 1, Eifert 2, Rudolph 3, Carlson 4, and Cole Kmet number 5. So I think those 6 we have there are probably 6 for sure, in my opinion. Tommy Tremble at number 5 and Coffee Dark Roast list was too high. I really like Tommy as a player, but the lasting effect of his career was pretty limited, and he also didn't impact the game as a receiver enough to merit being a
He also
a
had
top
the bad
5.
luck to overlap Kmet and Mayer's career.
Right.
But I don't know that he would ever been a prolific receiver, but man, could the guy block.
Yeah, he was probably the best blocker of the group. He was a very good blocker. All right, next question is from Mike DeVoy at Mike DeVoy1. Eric and Tyler, who's available at tight end for the Gator Bowl? And at Bob4ND3 asked who would be the starter. The rest of Mike's question was, will this limit the use of 2 tight end sets? And then he has another question. Let's get back to that after we talk about the tight ends, because it's not related.
Okay, so available tight ends, you have Mitchell Evans, and I think Mitchell Evans will be the starter.
Right.
And then you have Holden Stays, you have Davis Sherwood, who's a hybrid fullback tight end kind of guy. And then Kane Barong played a little bit right at the end of the year, I think in the BC game. So you basically have 4. Will that limit Notre Dame's 2 tight end sets? I don't think so. They have full confidence in Holden Stays. And I think Davis Sherwood, they have a lot of confidence that he can execute certain things. I don't think you're going to see too many balls thrown to Davis, but I think they can still do it. Now 3 and 4 tight end sets, that might get a little bit more challenging.
I do think it'll limit the frequency, because I think it's harder to make the argument that Evans and Stays are like your 2 of your 5 best skill players when you could easily make that argument when you had Mayer and Evans together. So I don't know that we'll see as many 2 tight end sets in the Gator Bowl specifically. I do think they'll use
a lot of Jaden Thomas.
Yeah, I think, and they will in
receiver
goal line scenarios, they'll line him up sort of close to the line of to the block, like the tight ends. And
there was even one TV announcer that thought he was a tight end.
Yeah, I think it was the one. It might have been the BYU game. It was a that wouldn't make sense, because those would be NBC announcers. But I think he caught a touchdown pass and hey, threw it to the tight end, and I was like, that's not a tight end. But anyways, I think it will decrease the 2 tight end sets, but I still think that it will be a part of the offense. I just don't know that it will be used as much. I would imagine there would be a switch to maybe more 2 running backs than 2 tight ends, but we will see how that plays out. The other question that Mike DeVoy asked was, in the PFF stats, you posted an article this week. I was surprised at how low the pass block numbers were for the running backs. Were you? And then how did Kyron do last year?
I had to look at those, refresh my memory on the running back stats from this year and last year. I looked at last year's first, and they're pretty hard graders with the running backs. Kyron was a little bit over 50, which isn't a very good grade. And Chris Tyree was actually ranked ahead of him, which I don't think is the case. So the eye test doesn't match the stat test. But then I looked at the 2022 stats, and they were awful. I mean, Logan Diggs was in single digits. Now, I don't remember there being a lot of great blitz pickups and pass blocking from the running backs this year. So I think Kyron Williams proved to be clearly above them, but I don't know that Chris Tyree, kind of halved his efficiency as a pass blocker. That seems a little harsh. So sometimes those numbers are a little head scratching, but I don't remember there being, that's something Dylan McCullough is going to have to work with his 7 running backs next year on pass blocking.
Yeah, they weren't good, so the numbers didn't surprise me. And then the Kyron Williams grade, Kyron was really great at times, and there were some missed assignments or bad blocks, or sometimes I think he would be too aggressive and then maybe get out of control at times. So I think that was probably reflected in his PFF pass blocking grade last year. But Kyron Williams was definitely the best of that group, and he was better than any of these guys this year. This year the guys weren't great, and we saw them stay in a lot. Like there weren't a lot of. I think that was one of the complaints, but people like, why isn't Drew Pine checking it down to the running back? And sometimes like, well, the running back is being asked to help in pass pro, and that wasn't necessarily something that any of those guys were particularly good at. So that's something that is a major point of improvement that position group will need next season. Next question is from Rico Benes at Mike EB95. How will Notre Dame replace the production of Michael Mayer as tight end? Is it realistic to expect Mitchell Evans to step into a tight end 1 role with only 2 career catches?
Well, you won't be able to replace his production, not with one person. You're going to see it spread out.
I don't think they'll all replace his production. Like, all the tight ends combined probably won't have 67
Well, I mean,
catches.
some of that's got to go to the wide receivers and running backs. I mean, you look at the skill set of some of the running backs, like Jadarian Price is going to add another really good pass catching running back. And I think Jeremiah Love, the incoming freshman, will fit in that category as well. And then you're going to start to see the rise of the wide receivers next year. I think Deion Cole, all the sophomore class will be much better, as will Tobias Merriweather. You have some really talented freshmen coming in. They're probably going to add a portal wide receiver, which is going to help that. But I think Mitchell Evans can be a pretty productive pass catcher. I know in just talking with John McNulty back when he was the tight ends coach, they were very high on Mitchell Evans becoming the next in that lineage of really good tight ends. And Tommy Rees has spoken very highly. We just haven't seen it in games because who are you going to throw it to? Michael Mayer? Are you going to use him as a decoy to throw to Mitchell Evans? And Mitchell didn't come into, playing this year until middle of the season. I think had he played all the way through the summer and played in preseason and so forth, he would have had a larger pass catching role. So I think Mitchell Evans is the guy that would be, but the one that I would really look forward to long term, I think Eli Reardon has the makeup to be in I'm not going to say Michael Mayer, but in the same sentence as some of the other really good tight ends that have played during the Brian Kelly era.
Yeah, I mean, he has the potential to be a very good pass catcher in Notre Dame's offense. I wouldn't expect that necessarily to happen next year right away. I mean, I think he'll have an impact, but he's not going to be like Michael. I don't even know that he would be as good as Michael Mayer was as a freshman next year. We'll see what comes of that.
I mean, nobody's been as good as Michael Mayer as a freshman.
Right.
Nobody
Yeah, that's not to
the school has.
Yeah, that's not a diss to Eli Reardon, to be clear. So, but yeah, I just think that the other, like Eric said, I agree with a lot of what he said there. The receivers will have to step up. The running backs will be used more. I do think it is a little bit concerning that Evans wasn't used at least a little bit more as a receiver. It's like, okay, if the defense is paying so much attention to Michael Mayer, I know you're going to still throw it to Mayer a lot, but it's like, couldn't he have been, or shouldn't he have been open more often? So
maybe Drew Pine couldn't see him.
Maybe I don't know. So, but and he doesn't.
It's going to make the bowl game interesting to see who a new quarterback is going to throw with no Michael Mayer there. I mean, that's super interesting to me. Whoever it is, whether it's Buckner and Jelly or both.
Whenever Notre Dame decides to stop running the ball, because South Carolina has a bad run defense. So I think in a perfect world, Notre Dame doesn't even have to throw it that much against this South Carolina defense, and maybe keep South Carolina's explosive offense off the field. All right. Next question is from @Charles W. Wolf. Why didn't Drew Pine use this bowl game as an audition for the transfer portal? Seems like a weird move to bolt early.
Well, I think he certainly has enough body of work to get people interested in our Rivals transfer portal. He's ranked fairly high among the quarterback options. Um, the other thing is that he doesn't want to get left out of the options. If you jumped into the portal on December 5th, you had the best chance of the full spectrum of teams that needed a quarterback. There are already, Phil Jurkovic's found a home. The McNamara kid from Michigan's already landed at Iowa. But there's going to be fewer options if you wait until after the bowl game of which to land. And I think there was probably an emotional aspect to it too, that, Drew was very disappointed that Notre Dame was bringing in or wanted to bring in a transfer portal quarterback to compete. Probably felt like he had done enough and just said, okay, I'm done with this. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him. I'm going to reach out to him after he picks his school, but I would bet that those things factored in.
Yeah, I think, we're sort of speculating.
I'm definitely speculating, but
right. Yeah, no,
think,
and I'm not saying like there's not much else to go off of until he can sort of speak to his mindset and why he decided to make that decision. But yeah, I'm in agreement that the bowl game wasn't necessarily he didn't need the bowl game to sort of prove what he can do. He had the majority of a season to do that. So I think whatever teams think of him would have been judged off of that whole body of work, that rather than what he does against South Carolina in the Gator Bowl.
There will be conceivably quarterbacks that do wait. I think Michael Pratt at Tulane might jump in the portal after Tulane plays USC. I think Hartman at Wake Forest might jump in after his team's done. But they wanted to be with their team. They wanted to play in their bowl game. And there's probably players on the Notre Dame roster that want to play in the bowl game at other positions that are willing to wait until January to jump in the portal, just to make sure that Tyler and I stay busy on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I think the Pratt speculation was also assuming that Willie Fritz wouldn't stay at Tulane, so I'm not sure how that changes with him deciding to stay and getting a contract extension there. So it's hard to say how any of this is going to play out for Drew Pine or any number of the quarterbacks. I think there's a lot of sort of juggling going on and figuring out when's the right time to go for a guy. Does Notre Dame in its own search decide to go now or wait to see who else is coming? And if you do that, do you miss out on some of these guys now because they want to be locked in?
They want to be in school,
right?
And on January 18th in class, at Notre Dame, if they're coming to Notre Dame,
right?
Last year it was Brandon Joseph was close to just getting in on time. Blake Grupe actually was a few days late to start classes.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a little bit more lax when it's a grad transfer rather than an undergrad. I think it would be difficult to get away with if you're an undergrad student, maybe not as.
And a lot of the guys that they're looking at are in that category that have multiple years left.
All right. Next question is from @Murray O'Connell. If Buckner plays well in the bowl game, does that scare away some transfer portal quarterbacks because maybe them starting at Notre Dame isn't such a sure thing after all?
Well, I think the guys in the portal have big egos. For one thing, they think they're better than whoever's on their current roster and whoever's on their future roster, or they wouldn't be there. Notre Dame may have their quarterback before the bowl game even happens, but I'm speculating, but even if Buckner plays really well in the bowl game, it's against a South Carolina defense that overall isn't good. Their pass defense is decent. Their best defensive back isn't going to play. So, and the other thing is Buckner has an injury history, and I think that will play into their thoughts about the viability of being the number one quarterback. There are some guys in the portal that will want a guarantee to be number one, and Notre Dame will not give them that. So I don't think it's going to dissuade them at all. Or if Steve Angeli plays well.
Yeah, I think I mean, I can see it playing a role if you're a graduate transfer with just 1 year left. It's like, do I really want to take the outside chance that Tyler Buckner ends up beating me out if this is my last year of college football? Like that could be a risk. But like you said, I think a lot of these guys have pretty big egos, so they're not as concerned about that. So I think it would probably be easier to convince someone that doesn't matter as much with someone that has multiple seasons left, because it's not sort of like a do or die season for that player. Even though if like it ended up being that Tyler Buckner beats that quarterback out, then I think that another quarterback that maybe has multiple years left would just then transfer back out of Notre Dame and go somewhere else after that. But that's sort of the.
I mean, they theoretically a grad transfer could come here in the spring semester and then leave and go somewhere after spring.
Right. Yeah. Maybe some serious. We're in the world of serious musical chairs when it comes to quarterbacks, especially. I mean, it's that way at a lot of positions because
JT Daniels will be on school number 4.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe the 4 school will be the right one for JT Daniels. All right. Next question is from Winstonian, who on the Insider Lounge. Who's a better quarterback, Tyler Buckner or DJ Uiagalelei?
Well, I would say on potential and traits and all that, DJ mops the floor with Tyler Buckner. I think at this very moment, I would take Tyler Buckner on my team because I think DJ's damaged from a standpoint of where he is mentally. And so I think what this question comes around to is, if DJ were available in the portal, would you take him over the other options and then have him compete with Buckner? That's how I'm framing the question. I wouldn't. I would let him go somewhere else and compete somewhere else. I'd be looking for somebody different. But there's so much that's unknown about Tyler Buckner in terms of his health and his potential. But I have been on the Tyler Buckner bandwagon, and I'm not ready to jump off yet. But again, in terms of potential and traits, I mean, DJ has the size, he has the better arm, he's more durable, he's got the pedigree. I mean, he was, a top 5 overall prospect in his class, but and they were in the same class, I believe, weren't they? No, DJ's a year ahead. He was in Drew Pine's class. But I'll let Tyler talk. I'm prattling on.
Yeah, I just haven't. There's not enough of a track record for Tyler Buckner to feel confident that you could pick him and be like, yeah, for sure, the rest of Tyler Buckner's career is going to be better than the rest of DJ Uiagalelei's. I'm just not at that point yet. Given all those things that I know, DJ Uiagalelei has struggled at times and not played to his potential at Clemson. But it would be hard for me to pass up that talent. Now, I don't know that I would do that if I'm Notre Dame. But I don't know. I think it comes with, okay, does that mean his brother's coming to school? I think his dad has a pretty big personality. Is that something that you want to bring into your program as a guy that's competing for a job? And now from the outside, it seems like DJ Uiagalelei has handled everything really well in terms of the Cade Klubnik situation, and he's been a good teammate and understands when he gets benched and has been supportive of Cade. But obviously he didn't wait to get in the transfer portal after the end of the season either. So I would still take DJ at this moment. But I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if Tyler Buckner ended up being the better quarterback over the next 2 years or whatever. Next question is from Drew Brennan 77 on the Insider Lounge. Who do you think has the final say on who Notre Dame is focusing on in the portal at the quarterback position? Do you think it is more Freeman or more Reese? Second question for both of you: list your top 3 transfer quarterbacks you want the Irish to go after.
Okay. I think certainly it's a collaboration. If I were in Marcus's position, I'd want the whole staff to kind of weigh in and look at the quarterbacks. I definitely would want Jared Parker, because he's been an offensive coordinator before, in on that decision as well. But ultimately, this is Marcus's team and it's Marcus's decision. And I think Marcus is comfortable making that decision. I think last year during the offseason, Marcus had to lean on Tommy Rees because of everything that was coming at him. And he did ask Tommy, do we need a portal quarterback? And Tommy didn't think that they did. And he lived with that decision. He can do a little bit more of his own research now. and get to know those quarterbacks. So ultimately, yeah, it's his decision, but it's a collaboration. It's not a dictatorship.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I agree with that. Freeman has the final say. He's going to want Tommy Rees's input, and is likely to listen to him, but it's going to fall on Marcus Freeman at the end of the day to make that decision.
As far as the portal quarterbacks that I like, I'm probably in the minority here, but I love Brennan Armstrong. I like that he only has 1 year left. I like his track record until this year when they had the coaching change, and he plummeted in statistically, and Virginia wasn't very good around him either. But he has that dual threat ability that I like in a quarterback, and he was prolific last year. I think he would have been at the top of the portal if he had come out last cycle. Number 2, I like Spencer Sanders of Oklahoma State. Again, a guy that didn't have as good a year statistically. They didn't have the players around him, and but I like his dual threat ability. I like that he only has 1 year left, because I think there's consequences to bringing in somebody with, let's say, like Hudson Card that has 3 years. I think there could be ripples in terms of what Buckner and Angeli do. And then my number 3 guy is Devin Leary from NC State. He does not have the dual threat ability. I think he does a good job of extending plays, has an injury history, so that's a little bit scary. But in terms of a guy that looked like an NFL prospect in 2021, he sure had that look. And I would roll the dice with his injury history, because now you have more. You have Kenny Minchie, you have Steve Angeli, you have all these quarterbacks coming in.
Yeah, I've yet to like find someone that I'm like, this is who I think Notre Dame needs to go after. I do not have strong opinions on the quarterback preference at this point. Now, maybe I probably haven't spent enough time trying to figure that out just because of everything else going on. Like, I'm not sitting here crunching Devin Leary and DJ Uiagalelei.
Well, you're not conducting a live chat where people are throwing that question at you either. And they're expecting an answer. Let me say one thing before you get rolling is,
sure,
if Pratt becomes available, he goes to the number 1 spot for me. He's a dual threat guy. He's been consistent all 3 years he's been a starter. I really like his game. So he would be my number 1 guy if he became available.
Yeah, he's the kind of, like, he's not leaving because something went poorly. Like, he's just like he wants to like elevate his profile to a better school if that's the situation for him. So I just, like, on that basis alone, I think I might end up agreeing with you if that ends up being the case. Because everyone else they have reasons they're leaving the school they're at. Like, they haven't been the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and wouldn't necessarily be the starter at their schools next year. So I don't know. I mean, this order that I'm giving here could change tomorrow. I also agree with you that I like the 1 year coming in and not being a problem or something that you have to worry about for the future. So Devin Leary's the one that's at the top of my list right now. The Brennan Armstrong thing, I don't know, was the 2021 season a fluke and a product of just being in a bad conference, and having some really talented players around him and a really good offensive coordinator? I don't know. Syracuse's offense looked pretty good as soon as that offensive coordinator went to Syracuse. So second, I put DJ Uiagalelei. I mean, that's I don't know. I have no idea what to expect from him, but there's the potential of him is just so tantalizing that I would be curious to see what that looks like, regardless of where he ends up. I don't know that that's very realistic or likely. And then third on my list, I put Hudson Card. I think
I called him Houston Card, maybe. Did I call him Hudson?
You've called him Houston at some point. I don't know if it was today or a different time, but
I want to call him Houston so bad. So I hope he doesn't end up here, because it's going to take retraining to call him Hudson.
All right. Well, that's maybe that's creating some bias in your opinion of him that you're like, I don't want to worry about having to figure out how to say his name. So, and maybe you're holding that against DJ Uyunglele too. All right. Our next question is from ND Football Discord at NDF_Discord. Who will finish with more career starts at Notre Dame, Kenny Minchey or Tyler Buchner?
Well, Tyler has 2, so he's got those in the bank. The thing that's really intriguing about Minchey is he's a guy that could surprise everybody, and he's a guy that could never play. He's and
the story of Notre Dame quarterbacks.
Right. His biggest problem is, okay, if we look at 2023, he's not in the picture realistically.
Right.
We look at 2024. Let's say Notre Dame had picked a portal quarterback that had 1 year left, then Buchner probably is going to be the guy in 2024 if he's still around. And all of a sudden now CJ Carr is on campus as an early enrollee. So really, Minchey's window is 2024 to make starts. If he doesn't that year, I think it's going to be difficult for him to beat out CJ Carr as CJ gains experience. But he's so interesting to me that if somebody could pull it off, it's him. Like, I don't have the same feeling about Angeli that Angeli could pull that off, but I do think Kenny Minchey could. I'm still going to go with Buchner since he's got the 2 starts in the bank, and probably number 3 in the bowl game.
I'm going to go with Minchey. I like it's. I mean, it's a fascinating question. I really like this question. I mean,
it's really. If we had prizes, this question would win a prize.
It's I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, because I don't know that I agree that if someone comes in next year and is the starter, like say Devin Leary comes in and starts 1 year and then he's gone, I don't know that that's Tyler Buchner's job to lose at that point. Like, if he's been relegated to being a backup once again, like how much of an advantage does he have over Kenny Minchey? The fact that he played in more games early in his career, like I'm not sure that would be like insurmountable for Kenny Minchey to end up beating out Tyler Buchner in that scenario. I like I know CJ Carr is talented, but like if Kenny Minchey's enrolled before him, like CJ Carr is going to have to do something to beat him out, I think, because I think Minchey is talented. And I'm not saying that CJ Carr won't, but I think that's something that would sort of still have to happen. And Minchey would have a little bit of a leg up there and could be in position to like Minchey could realistically become the starter in 2024. I don't think it would be realistic for CJ Carr to be the starter in 2024. So I guess that's why I'm going with Minchey. But I could go back and forth on this one all day.
Yeah, Minchey is just, I can't remember a quarterback I've been this excited and confused about in terms of his future.
And that's highly related to like the complete uncertainty of the position right now, right? I mean, no one knows what's going on. And obviously the CJ Carr breathing down his neck makes that even more
I mean, and some
too.
of it goes back to Tommy Rees's evaluations. I mean, he offered Tyler Buchner before he was a starter in high school,
right?
Which is amazing. So that he saw enough of him in a camp to offer him a scholarship before he had started his first high school game.
All right. Next question is from SJB75 on the Insider Lounge. Do you believe both Tommy Rees and Al Golden will return to Notre Dame as coordinators for the 2023 season? This feels like a question that we keep getting asked as of late.
Right. So, well, I think some people are asking it because Jim Leonard suddenly became available from Wisconsin. And I think he may be, if he's not the best defensive coordinator in college right now, he's in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tommy Rees, I mean, I think people ask that question for different reasons. One, they think he underachieved this year and some people want him fired. And 2, some people think he's going to get picked off by an NFL team. So it kind of goes both ways with him. I know when Al Golden signed on with Notre Dame, Marcus kind of wanted a 2-year commitment from him, you know, in handshake kind of terms. I think if something came up He certainly would say, Al, yeah, you ought to take that but I think Al either wants to be an NFL defensive coordinator or a head coach in college. And I don't think this year's performance gets him to either of those.
Right.
So I think he's back. Reese is a wild card. But I think his performance this year, even though there were some bright moments, and you could say that he developed Drew Pine pretty well. Notre Dame is still 74th in the country in total offense. And I don't think that gets people excited about him being a college head coach. It's more if an NFL team, he's got a connection with somebody that really likes him, says, we'd like you to be an NFL quarterbacks coach. I don't think he would be able to use this season to get an offensive coordinator's job in the NFL, but stranger things, I guess, have happened. So that's a long way of me saying I think both will be back for 2023.
I'm glad you brought it back there because I was going to restate it to make sure that you answered yes or no. Currently, I would say yes, that they're both back as well. I don't think the markets for either of them will be particularly hot this year, and I would think that they would have the potential to have better opportunities in the future with better seasons. The Reese thing with the NFL is interesting because I don't think those are going to go away. I think he has connections and relationships with guys in the NFL, and those aren't going to just dissipate if he decides to stay in college football for a handful of years. I think it has more to do with if he's okay, I would enjoy being in the NFL more than being a college football coach. Or if he was offered a head coaching job in college football, maybe that would be something he would do. But I don't see that those decisions are things that have to be made this off season. And he's so invested in what Notre Dame's doing now in terms of, he went through quite the year in terms of his starting quarterback gets hurt. He loses out on Dante Moore, thinking that's a sure thing. He doesn't get a quarterback commitment in the 2023 class till November. And now he's out on the recruiting trail looking for transfer portal quarterbacks. That would be a lot to sort of be okay, I put all this time and effort into all these things, and I'm not going to see any of that through. Now, when there's an opportunity that you think is better for you, you have to take it when it's the right time. You can't necessarily say, well, I'm too invested in what I've already done. If there's too good of an opportunity, you got to take it. But I'm being long-winded as well, but at least at the beginning I said yes, so people knew where my head was at, and I gave at least some context for why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. All right, next question is from Marie Biafore at Biafore_Marie. Reflecting on the past season, what do you think was the most successful and least successful thing that both Al Golden and Tommy Rees did during the season? What do you think each of them needs to work on the most in the offseason?
As far as Al Golden, I would say they got better over the year. The USC game, you can't throw that out because they played against Caleb Williams and they didn't have their full complement of defensive backs in that game. But they ended up being 22nd in the country in total defense, which is an accomplishment, and they improved in a lot of areas. So, I would give him credit for that. There were certain individual players that came along and improved under Al Golden. And I think he was in a difficult spot with a third defensive scheme in 3 years. What they need to work on, I would put at the top of the list, is becoming a dominant run defensive team. They were 43rd this year, but they're pretty up and down with that. And I think if they're a dominant run defensive team, it helps a couple of their other weak areas. You get teams into more third and longs, and you tend to get more turnovers in those situations. They weren't very good in turning people over. They weren't good on red zone defense either. They're one of the worst teams in red zone defense. I think if you're a dominant run team, you put people in third and goal from the 8 rather than third and goal from the 2. So that would be my suggestions there. Why don't you go first with Golden, then we'll both do Reese.
Okay. The thing that I thought he was the most successful at this season was getting the most out of Notre Dame's secondary. Now, I think probably for both these guys, when I'm talking about my opinions of what they did well or didn't do well, I think some of that blame or credit is shared with the position coaches. Like I think
Right.
Mike Mickens gets a lot of credit, and Chris O'Leary deserves a lot of credit for what Notre Dame's secondary did. But I think Al Golden's defense really maximized, and the passing defense was really good. Even when they played against the best quarterbacks that they played against, for the most part, they kept those guys in check when it mattered, at least in terms of passers. Now, Caleb Williams ran all over the place, but they kept things in check against C.J. Stroud and Drake May, at least when it mattered against Drake May. Drake May did get a lot of yards when the game was pretty much decided at that point, but I thought that was the most impressive thing that Al Golden's defense did. Most unsuccessful thing was the red zone defense. Like that didn't really get that much better throughout the year. That's something that Notre Dame needs to improve on, and so that would be on the offseason to-do list. And so that would probably be the number one thing I would put on his offseason to-do list. And I think sort of beyond that would be sort of just what's the ideal personnel for Notre Dame? What does Al Golden's defense look like? How much of what was happening this year was sort of like a coagulation of the two defenses and trying to meld the personnel and the defense that Marcus Freeman ran with what Al Golden's comfortable with? Like, are there different things that he wants to do to the defense that he didn't get a chance to do because it would be sort of too much? Like I think there was already enough changes that happened that maybe there were some more things that they would like to do that they weren't able to enact. So sort of figuring out like what does that look like? Is Notre Dame doing what it wants to do most as a defense and from a scheme standpoint, from using the personnel standpoint?
Well, I think just adding to that, the development of Jaylon Smith is huge in that because he's, in their mind, the ideal rover. He's a guy that can be on the field so that they don't have to be in nickel so much.
Mm-hmm.
When they were in nickel, it compromised their run defense. So as good as Tariq Bracy was in so many facets, it's not ideally the defense you want to be sitting in 80% of the time. I'm not sure that they were in it that much, but it felt like that. And then it really minimized what Jack Kaiser could do too, because he's not an ideal rover. He's really a will linebacker playing rover.
All right. What are your thoughts on the Reese aspects of this?
Number one would be number one in terms of what he did well would be he got the offense to a point where it had an identity, where they were this bruising running team that was successful doing that against most teams, and they were able to win a lot of games. They could play at different speeds. They got better at third down as the year went on. Drew Pine got better as the year went on, had some of his best performance. They weren't sloppy with turnovers. As far as what they need to do better, number one with a bullet is better in-game adjustments. Notre Dame only scored 52 points all season in the third quarter, and that hurt them in a lot of games. And in their losses, that third quarter was like a lost quarter, and it seemed like there needed to be quicker adjustments in the third quarter. And I would say my other criticism is just maybe not having an answer for teams that showed the offensive line different fronts, different looks, that had a lot of movement, and it's not fair to compare the second Utah game with Notre Dame's game against USC, because Caleb Williams on offense kind of drives both sides of the ball with what he can do, and he wasn't at 100%. But Utah had answers for USC's movement. They were able to run the ball against,
right?
And I think Tommy Rees needed to make those kind of adjustments that Utah did, because I think Notre Dame's offensive line and running backs are every bit as good as Utah's.
Yeah, I do. That was something that Notre Dame's offensive line did struggle with. Was some of that movement and stuff, and what like
Navy game too.
Yeah, the Navy game. When I was reviewing the USC game, it was like I didn't track in my head, and maybe it's partially because like USC's defensive tackles aren't huge, But like they had defensive tackles making plays on the edge. And it's like, what are those guys doing there? And that was just how much they were twisting and stunting up front on the defense that I think it was really causing Notre Dame's offensive line problems with that. In terms of what Reese did most successfully on the offense, I would just say maximizing Michael Mayer's impact. Now I know it doesn't take rocket science to say, hey, let's get the ball to Michael Mayer, but they were able to do that in so many different ways and still overcome what, for the most part, whenever defenses were doing, because defenses knew it was going to him and it didn't matter. Notre Dame was able to come up with ways to get him open. And then obviously, even when he was covered, he would still make plays too. So I thought that was impressive. What I thought the offense was the most or the least successful with was developing reliability at wide receiver. And I think that's personnel related. I think that is play calling related. I think it's quarterback decision making related. All those things sort of went into like Notre Dame just not being able to rely on its receivers to make plays on a consistent basis, and that it makes it really hard to be a successful offensive coordinator. So I think he has to find ways to do that, whether it's getting the balls to receivers in better situations, having a better understanding of what those receivers can do, having a better understanding of what the quarterbacks can do, and not just like are capable of doing it, but are willing to actually do when it comes to game time. Like, make this decision. This is where the ball needs to go. Don't take the easy way out and throw it to Michael Mayer. So I think that was something that Tommy Rees didn't necessarily get the highest grades for this season. And so I think figuring out how to do that this offseason is sort of at the top of the checklist for him, and what Notre Dame's offense can be moving forward with. And then like, what else does he need to do the offseason? What he's already doing, like try to figure out who the quarterback is, like making that decision, figuring out what transfer they can get in here, making the right decision in terms of who should start, and developing that quarterback to be able to win games for the Notre Dame next season. All right. Next question is from LDL Go Irish on the Insider Lounge. I was once told by a renowned high school coach that people do not realize that coaches are not as smart as they might think. He said coaches often make player position choices and depth chart choices that ultimately are not best for the team. Given that there are so many reps in practice to go around and in the games, and reps are needed to improve, which two non-freshmen on offense and defense, in your opinion, should be getting more reps?
So I read this as two players on each side of the ball.
I read it that way too, and it was impossible for me to come up with two on either side of the ball.
Well, I can do it on defense. It's hard on offense because a lot of times the player that needs more reps is a freshman. I mean, Steve Angeli is the number 2 quarterback. He's a freshman. Tobias Merriweather is a freshman. And you really don't like to use offensive linemen, and then tight end Holden Stays needs more reps, and he's a freshman. So right. I came up with on offense, I came up with Deion Colsey. And then if I just threw Rocco Spindler out there because everybody loves Rocco, but I don't think he deserves to start in front of somebody else. Maybe then twos deserve to get more playing time in some of these blowouts. On defense, I came up with 3. I came up with Jordan Botello, and he did get reps towards the end of the year and was productive with them. I thought Prince Colley and Jack Kaiser were kind of the odd men out at times. Jack Kaiser really played very well and played consistently, but when Notre Dame played so much nickel, he was really in competition with Marist Liufau for reps, and Marist was a little bit up and down, and Colley was in the same position. Really athletic linebacker that plays the will, and was kind of at the mercy of that competition there of Notre Dame only playing two linebackers on the field. So those would have been my choices.
Okay, yeah, I think those are good choices. Colley was the person that I had earmarked as the defensive choice. And like you said, like Botello, I felt like he was getting those opportunities at the end of the year. So that's why I didn't necessarily pick that one, but I can certainly understand that viewpoint. And
he needs him now with Foskey.
Right. Yeah. He's going to now. Like that's not a question or an option necessarily. So we'll see that. And then I like the Kaiser idea too. I feel like there should have been a bigger role for him in this defense somehow. And I
And
understand.
when I asked Al Golden that, he thought so too. He goes, I need to get Jack out there more.
Right. And it's like,
But
okay, well,
well, you're
well,
the one in charge.
Do you want me to call you at halftime and remind you or what? All right. Next question is another one from LDL Go Irish on the Inside Lounge. Did Jaden Bellamy get a good enough look from the coaching staff? Why is Jaden Mickey ahead of him on the depth chart? And it's not because he doesn't have a Y in his name.
So Bellamy came in early like Mickey did, and Ben Morrison was a later enrollee. I think their initial thoughts in winter workouts, especially, was Bellamy might have been able to help them at nickel a little bit. They liked his skill set and so forth. It seemed like he had a lot of injuries, hamstring injury late in the year. He had concussions. I think that kind of slowed him down. And once the other two freshmen kind of took hold, it was difficult for him to leapfrog anybody on the depth chart. Mickey was super impressive in the spring and into August, then maybe hit a wall a little bit. I think some of that was he was trying to learn all three positions, especially the nickel and the field corner. Once he kind of honed in on the field corner, he got better. The problem was he had some concussion issues that kept him off the field in some games where he could have gotten some valuable reps. But I think you'll see Jaden Mickey take a big step next year, and it's unfortunate that Bellamy decided to jump in the transfer portal, but I don't know that that's completely related to playing time.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame liked Jaden Bellamy. I think going back to it might have been like the early signing period when we had when we got to talk to the coaches. I think that was when Marcus Freeman spoke really highly of him. He's like, "Hey, this Jaden Bellamy might end up being the best of this group," which was certainly high praise considering that what we've seen for Benjamin Morrison as a freshman. But yeah, I just think that Notre Dame liked Jaden Mickey more. He showed more on the practice field, seemed to show a better base knowledge of the defense. Jaden Mickey really stood out in spring practice, whereas I don't know that I saw much from Jaden Bellamy. I think he was dealing with some injury issues at times too. Right. So I know like the success for Jaden Mickey didn't really translate to the field. He seemed to always be stuck in a bad position in the limited opportunities that he got. But Notre Dame's coaching staff clearly trusted him. Like he was earning that opportunity. It wasn't like he was getting put out there by default. So I think he was like he didn't execute when it came to game days always, but he was the one that sort of showed the best command of that position going into Saturdays. And so that's why he was given those opportunities.
And I Marcus shared a story of the two of them, Morrison and Mickey,
right?
Kind of hanging out and doing film work together, staying after practice together. There's a lot to like. I mean, we're going to look back, I think, with Mickey and say, boy, remember those growing pains? They're not around anymore. I think he's got a real bright future.
Right. I would agree. Next question is from at Mr. Joe Seiler. What happens when a player enters the transfer portal? I know they can come back to their original school or transfer to another, but what happens if no one else takes them?
That's what happens. They don't have anywhere to go. They can go walk on somewhere, or they can go be a college student and not play football. But there are quite a few players that get stuck in the transfer portal with nowhere to go. We don't hear about them because there's so many high profile players that move around and do well. But yeah, there are players that end up with no options and get stuck, and they can't go back to their school unless their school says, yeah, come on back, we'll have you.
They could go back. They could like say this happened to a Notre Dame player. I won't put a name on it, but if they go to the portal, then Notre Dame doesn't have to honor their scholarship, but they would still be an enrolled student at Notre Dame, right? Correct. Like if they wanted to pay the tuition, like they're not booted out of school, their scholarship is taken away. Now, maybe if they had bad grades, then the admissions or whatever, one of the deans of the college would be like, all right, you're
I said they could go back and be a regular student. They just wouldn't be able to play football, or they'd have to walk on to maintain that. No, they're not kicked out of school, but they don't have that football scholarship to, and hopefully then they have a big checkbook if they have given up on that scholarship.
Right, and they're chasing a football dream when they're going into the transfer portal, so they're not likely to just stay somewhere as a student. So yeah, I mean, there are consequences to entering the transfer portal that you have to be aware of before you do that, because you could end up in a situation where you're not in a good spot. I mean, there's so many places where you can play college football, so I would think you'd be able to end up somewhere. But it's probably like if no one you're probably gonna have to take a step down in competition to do that, and certainly your desire to play college football would be tested at that point. All right, last question we have is from @GoldenDomer281. Where has Tommy Rees been hiding? And I'm going to assume that Golden Domer isn't an Inside ND Sports subscriber, because this has been discussed on the Insider Lounge message board at times this week.
Okay, I'll let you answer that, because I don't understand the question. Where's he been hiding? You mean as far as our trail tracks?
Yes. Yeah. He means, yeah.
I do understand that a little bit. So why hasn't he shown up in those all the time?
Yeah, I think that's what what Golden Domer
my
is
understanding
asking.
is because he's been visiting with portal guys, portal quarterbacks, and Notre Dame wants to kind of keep that on the down low for now, and not have their plans kind of splashed out there to other teams. That's my interpretation.
Correct. That is what I've reported. So I would
from me reading Tyler's posts, that's how I would interpret that.
So yeah, he's recruiting in a covert way. I mean, Notre Dame has been protective of that information. And unless we can get portal quarterbacks or the recruits that they're seeing, like someone else to go on the record and say that, yeah, I got a visit from Tommy Rees, like then we're stuck not being able to report that information. We believe he's been working on quarterbacks in the transfer portal market and is active there. And so that's why you don't see him in pictures with like when the rest of Notre Dame's offensive staff is visiting a running back. Tommy Rees hasn't been there this week.
It's not that he has a bad haircut and doesn't
well, I think some people were like, well, maybe he's like interviewing for jobs elsewhere. I think that was the other thing that people were wondering. I mean, those are the only two like obvious answers, and I don't know that people are sort of broadcasting like what has been going on, because that information isn't public right now. So
wasn't Al Washington in that same deal maybe a day or two?
Yeah. Tommy Rees isn't the only person that Notre Dame has sort of been keeping under wraps their location on a daily basis. There have been other guys, but not as like Tommy Rees has been. I don't know that we've reported where he's been all week. Whereas last Friday he was visiting with Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr on the first day of the contact period, but his location has been a closely guarded secret at this point. And that's all we can say. Like, obviously, if we have more information to share, the first place we will share that is with our subscribers on the Insider Lounge message board. So I would encourage people who listen to this podcast and aren't subscribed to go ahead and do that, because we're not going to if we have that information, we're not going to bring it to the podcast before we bring it to the people who pay us and spend the most time with us on our message board. All right, that's it for today's episode of the Inside ND Sports Podcast. If you don't already, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and other popular podcast platforms. If you like what you hear, give us a star rating, leave a review, and share our podcast feed with your next Uber driver. Check us out on YouTube if you're not already subscribed to us there. Our audience for our Monday Night Live shows keeps increasing, so that is encouraging us to continue doing live shows. So keep track of what we're doing over there. And there's really been too much news going on to skip a week on the podcast. So we'll be back next week. We don't have a date necessarily lined up. We try to schedule that around breaking news. Although today we are recording this hours after both Dylan Edwards decommitted from Notre Dame and Isaiah Foskey announced that he was leaving for the NFL draft. So today was a combination of things that broke before the podcast, but we were dedicated and wanted to make sure we got our interview in with Drayk Bowen as well. So thank you for listening. And until We're back. Stick with InsideNDSports.com for all your Notre Dame football coverage needs.